Well guys, it's finally out. You've been asking me for a Superman and Lois video for months now, but I've been holding off on it because the season was still going, and I don't really like to make videos about things when they're not finished. I've learned by now that despite how good a show can be when it first starts, that doesn't necessarily mean it'll stay that way. And sometimes it doesn't take more than half a season to really fall off. But now that the entire first season is out, I can finally talk about why it's so freaking good. The later seasons could completely suck ass for all we know, but even then, I'll still be able to look back on this video and say, yeah, but season 1 was okay. I'm kind of torn about how exactly I want to approach this review because a lot of the things I want to talk about are chock full of spoilers, and I don't usually like to review anything without getting into spoilers because when I talk about stuff, I like to really get into detail, and that's the only way I can do that. But this is also a show that I really want you guys to watch if you haven't already. I'm willing to bet that a lot of you out there gave up on the Arrowverse a long time ago. The only reason you clicked on this video was because you were intrigued by the title, me, the world's biggest Flash hater, talking about an Arrowverse show and actually liking it, or conversely, you just came here to quickly take to my comments and tell me just how wrong I am because no show in the Arrowverse could ever be good. Well, if that's why you're here and you've already left your strongly worded comment that I'll totally read, then before you vanish into a void of self-righteousness, maybe just stick around and let me explain to you why Superman and Lois is not only good, not only the best Arrowverse show, but is one of the best adaptations of Superman I've ever seen put to screen. So I'm going to try to very lightly talk about the show at first without giving anything away before eventually giving a spoiler warning, but hopefully in the time before you click off this video, you'll have decided you want to check the show out because more people need to see this show. It honestly makes me sad how little attention it's been getting just because of the network it's on. Speaking of which, that's actually the first thing I wanted to mention in this review, the CW. Over the years, the CW has sort of built a reputation for itself, one of mediocrity, where terrible writing, bad CGI, and manufactured formulaic drama take center stage. If I were to simply say 20 episodes of absolutely nothing of substance, prequel-tier dialogue, and cheesy, over-the-top plotlines, you wouldn't even know what show I'm describing because that was all of them. I just described all of them. And it's weird because I know this network didn't used to be the way that it is now. For example, my favorite show probably ever, Supernatural, started off really strong for like 5 years of consistently good television. Smallville is yet another Superman adaptation that I feel is done right, and it was released on this network too. I understand that when both the shows I just mentioned came out, the CW was technically just called the WB. It was basically just the TV network for the Warner Bros. Brand, which the CW technically still is, but only in the fact that CW is owned by Warner Bros. And allowed to use their characters in these shitty-ass TV series. But I still don't understand how things ever went so wrong with the CW if they are, for all intents and purposes, the same company. If I had to guess, it probably has something to do with new management, but I don't know enough about the subject to actually give a real, credible answer. I do think that the deterioration of a once great network would be an interesting subject to make a full video about one day, maybe, but it's hardly relevant to this video. Because Superman and Lois is not a CW show. It was released on the CW for reasons that I won't even begin to understand, but the show was written, shot, and edited all by HBO, and for some reason was produced on a dying network that pretty much guaranteed nobody was ever gonna watch it. Even though the cinematography is incredible and the writing is spot on, even though this is some of the best acting I've seen in superhero media for a long time, and even though it's evident that the people who worked on this show actually give a damn about the story they're telling, no one will ever see it because it was released on the wrong channel. So if you want to see a superhero show with the same visuals as Game of Thrones and the writing quality of... Actually, Game of Thrones is the only other HBO show that I watch, but the first few seasons were pretty good, so if that's something you're into, then I absolutely implore you to check it out. But now with all that out of the way, let me actually tell you why this show is just... so good. Now, I know I'm not alone in thinking that Superman has been very poorly represented in live-action media. For someone who has so many movies and shows written about him, not many of them are very good. Other than, again, Smallville, the only things I've seen up until now that were actually getting him right are the animated shows, of which I've actually seen very few. And the cartoons are kind of in the same boat as this show because even now, after all these years and after all these great animated films and shows have been released, many people still don't take them seriously. There's just something so culturally ingrained in so many people's heads that rigidly view anything animated as kiddie. And yet, those same people probably wouldn't let their kids watch shows like Rick and Morty, curiously enough. But what I think most Superman media fails to do is get the two most fundamental aspects of his story right. Clark Kent and Lois Lane. It's weird how the two main characters are always so incorrectly used, but I don't think either of them have been handled well for a very long time. Especially Lois. Even in Smallville, she's kind of annoying and not really that likable, don't at me. But from the very beginning of the first episode, we get this moment.
Cool costume.
Thanks. My mom made it for me.
And I thought to myself, oh yeah, that's Clark Kent. See, what I think most people don't understand about Superman is that he's human at heart. He may be a Kryptonian, but he crash-landed in some nowhere Kansas town, was raised by two nobody Kansas folk, and lived a pretty mundane life as a nobody Kansas farm boy. These new movies like to portray him as some kind of god among men with no emotions, but he grew up here just like anyone else. He rode the bus to school, he stuttered every time his crush passed him in the hall. He had friends and bullies, and he aspired to do something greater in his own life just like any of us. He didn't even discover his powers until he was a teenager. So when I see a Superman story treat Clark as this isolated, all-powerful being who can't connect to the people he supposedly fights for, I get a little upset because I know what we could be getting instead. In this show, Clark Kent is a family man first. There are entire conflicts centered around his balancing being Superman with raising teenage sons, and I think that's so cool because as far as we've gotten in any mainstream Superman live-action media, this is something we've never seen before, and it helped anchor him to his humanity even further. Clark's humanity is actually kind of one of the main conflicts of this show, but even though it's sort of alluded to that he might break bad, you know he never truly will. And not because he's Superman and Superman is always good, but because the show takes the time to show you who he has to fight for. But of course, none of that would even be possible if he didn't have Lois Lane, and like I already said, if there's one character who I think gets even worse handling than Superman in most media, it's her. And I think I know why. Lois Lane is an intrepid, can-do reporter who can smell a story a mile away, and she never backs down from a corrupt business tycoon or a malicious ne'er-do-well. But the problem is that in most media I've seen, she falls into that really annoying, strong female character trope that's plagued a lot of potentially awesome stories for years now, and you all know which one I'm talking about. The freaking girl boss who don't need no man and knows how to do everything and can kill a man with one thumb. The writers know they don't have to try with characters like these because if you voice any problems regarding them, then you're a horrible sexist monster. And before you take to the comments, that's not me saying I'm anti-feminist or whatever, but this has been a plague on the movie industry for decades, and honestly, I think Lois has taken the worst of it. I used to not really like Lois because in everything I'd seen her in, I found her to just be really boring, and that's because the writers never seem to know what to do with her. If they make her a damsel, they're sexist, but they can't really have her going around beating up bad guys because she doesn't have any powers. And I like what the show does with her character so much. She's still that strong woman that people want her to be with her own sense of agency, but she's also a character with character traits and motivations. She still goes through her own story arcs and she fails a lot. She also knows when she's beaten and isn't afraid to ask Superman to save her. It's just so refreshing seeing the wife of a superhero written competently who doesn't needlessly endanger her own life and doesn't end up saving herself against superpowered beings who she should have no business even being able to escape from, much less taking them down. And there is one more thing I want to say about Lois, but I'll save that for the spoiler section, so let's go talk about the other characters because there's a lot of good ones. This show does such a good job doing away with stereotypical archetypes. This is something that I was seriously afraid of at first because at first glance, each character on this show seems to fall into one archetype or the other. Lois, as we already talked about, is the strong, independent woman, but she's actually written well. Her dad is this hardened general who always puts his work before his family, and he's not quick to trust anyone. At first, I assumed there were going to be a lot of conflicts centered around how much he hates Clark for marrying his daughter and how much he distrusts Superman, but thankfully I was wrong about that. He recognizes that Superman is a good person who really cares about Earth, and he fully trusts Clark to protect his family. Jordan is the angsty, depressed teenager who gets picked on a lot and feels like the black sheep of the family. I was afraid every episode would involve him yelling at his parents for not understanding him and then storming off to his room, but no, he and Jonathan are actually both really good in this show. I expected them to severely annoy me, but they're actually some of my favorite characters. Also, look at this man's eyes. Holy fuck, they're beautiful. And then we have Kyle. And man, oh man, do I love what they did with Kyle. They set him up initially to be that hot-headed douchebag archetype who loves barbecue and beer and doesn't like Lois because she doesn't like Morgan Edge, and Morgan Edge is bringing a lot of jobs to the town. I think you all know exactly what I'm getting at here. But this show completely flips stuff like that on its back. Deep down, Kyle just wanted what he thought was best for Smallville and was a genuinely good person who cares for his family. He's also a freaking firefighter, and they're braver than any cape-wearing superpowered being who charges headfirst into a fight that they know they're gonna win. All in all, of the main characters, there isn't a single one that I don't like. Even the villain is awesome. This show is just so well written, and now it's time to talk about spoilers, so if you want to avoid that, skip to this time frame for my final score. Or, if you're planning to leave now, I just want to say one last time to please watch this show. Anyway, Morgan Edge is just such a good villain. At first, I wasn't too happy about the reveal that he was Clark's Kryptonian brother because I really liked that he was just the savvy businessman who employs stronger beings to do his dirty work. But then I realized there's already a Superman villain who fits that exact criteria. He's kind of obscure, so, you might not have heard of him. In any case, the idea really did grow on me. Even if this plot did feel kind of like a retread of Man of Steel, the crucial difference here is that the story being told is actually good. But if I had to point out one problem that I have with this, it's the way they handled Zod. I don't know, it's really not a big deal, but I would have liked if he was more than just an antagonist for one single episode. And while we're listing complaints, I may as well harp on the Arrowverse some more, cause I gotta. I know this show takes place on Earth 1, or Prime Earth or whatever, but honestly, I just like to watch this show and not think about the rest of them. Seeing John Diggle just reminded me, oh yeah, this show exists in the same universe as this. The show didn't really do it that much, thank God. I kept expecting at least one episode to feature Supergirl as a special guest star, but thankfully that never happened. I mean, I guess it still could in like a future season, but my God, please no. Anyway, back to the good stuff. John Henry Irons is like the best character on this show. And you don't understand, in the first episode, I wasn't really sure about this guy. Some dude showing up in a Master Chief suit and taking on Superman that just didn't seem very interesting to me. But my mistake was thinking he was a bad guy. Again, the reversion of stereotypes is just so good here. I figured John would be that hardened soldier who just can't ever bring himself to trust Superman no matter what. And I remember being genuinely surprised when he actually tried to save Clark. I don't know, I just find the concept of mistrusting Superman to be really overdone, but again, it's done so fucking well here. And not only do I love the character, but I fucking love what he represents. Lois Lane was his wife in another universe. They had a daughter together, and I just think it's such a powerful thing that the universe where Superman goes bad is the one where he never fell in love with Lois Lane. Fuck, why am I tearing up? Fuck, goddamn. At its core, this show is about family, and I just think it's a nice change of pace, both for the Arrowverse and for Superman as a whole. See, I think most of the other Superman stories failed because they were trying so hard to reinvent the character, trying to mold him into this modern-day superhero. But that was a mistake because Superman never needed reinventing. Just put him on a farm, put him with people he cares about, and have him balance a life of heroism with a life with his family. Hey, the non-spoiler people are back. Glad you guys could make it. You're just in time to see me give Superman and Lois an extremely rare but totally deserved 9.5 out of 10.